Okay, so hi, welcome. Week 2. We just finished writing on the two big questions for the week. What is work for and what is life for? So if you're watching the replay and you want to play along with what's about to happen, I would pause the video and take about 20 minutes to write what is work for and what is life for. I'm curious about how this is landing. I'm just going to say a couple of preliminary remarks about why we're doing what we're doing and then kind of jump into this conversation. This course I kind of see as two things running concurrently: a kind of artistic, the art of presence, as it were, of like being present to our experience, which is artistic, creative, mysterious, kind of right brain. And then this parallel track of life design, which is pragmatic, scientific, methodical, spreadsheety, kind of like figuring out where we are and where we're going. I'm really interested in how these overlap, and which is why we're doing the Bill Burnett and Dave Evans with the Julia Cameron type stuff representing those two things. So this is part of figuring out where we're going. So if you think about kind of the first 3 weeks to figure out really what this course is for us and where we are, this is kind of the centerpiece in some way of figuring out what it is that we're doing here, which is why I asked you what work is for and what life is for. Then we're going to look at how those overlap, if and where, and start getting creative about that. Okay, but I've already said too much. Does anyone want to share what they wrote or something that happened this last week that connected celebrations or challenges from last week? Are kind of fair game at this point. I want to open it up to discussion.
Okay, I can go. All of it connected. So I'm like, I don't even know where to start with that piece, because what the last thing I had written that I had been working on before this was in response to something I had been listening to and thinking about my future and how it is so affected by what I project on it from my past. And the idea that even though I've done a lot of work for myself to not live in my past, that I don't, sorry, I'm choking a little here, that I'm not just perseverating on my past constantly and obsessed with it. And I've done a lot of work with that, and I like, oh great, I've nailed that. But yet the feelings and actions and who I am is all a product of the past. And unless I change, I wasn't even recognizing that I take all of that, and anytime I think about the future or work or purpose of life, that I can't possibly have a different experience going forward unless I look at some of that and let it go and replace it with something different, so that I can be open to possibilities of something other than all of the different things I've experienced in my life. So I know it's like a big, huge thing, but there's just like this thing that came to me. And in looking at this, the idea of what life is for, I have a spiritual belief. I'm not religious, but I have a spiritual belief that we are here to get to know ourselves better, and ourselves being that true inner being that we have. And I think that I was previously religious many years ago, a Christian, and a lot of this stuff I think even held true for that. It was the spirit, right? The thing within me that's not this human form, and getting to know that piece of me by uncovering, and shedding the layers of what this human experience has been, to get to know that being and to be in community with others so that we can help each other get to know that being. I see as for me, the purpose for being here. and work as one of the mechanisms for both one, as I get to know that being, express that being in this existence, and also as a means to get to know myself even further. If anybody got all that.
I got some pretty good notes there. Helped me, and a nice compliment into where I didn't go in my pages, but I'd want to go in speaking. I mean, there's two things that really stood out to me, and maybe we can go with just the idea of really knowing ourselves, and that idea of coming back to what we really are. Depending on how you want to talk about that based on the cultural tradition, you could look at like a Christian tradition or these other traditions of surfacing what is essential in us and kind of letting go of the things that aren't, and bringing other people in that kind of connection and community is really interesting.
I was thinking, you said something that made me write down that jumping ship is hard, right? You were talking about uncovering your past, that you might discover what is possible in the future. And I have always been sort of when I think about work in its traditional form, I've literally always done my own thing for the longest time. I'm self-employed, have been doing that forever. So when I write to jump ship is hard because my next big ideas are big, and jumping into that thing is big and kind of scary. So for you to be like, oh, that transition from letting go of what our perceptions of this past life or, whatever is, or past work was, or what it should look like, and trying to do something new, like that's hard. And I feel somebody like, I feel like that's an effort.
Yeah.
Is that work? Would we agree that it's work to almost put ourselves in a new place, to rethink, reimagine? I put physical work as a physical displacement, putting energy to move something from one place to the next. Like just from work and physics is the energy required to move something.
I like that.
And so it's like also like we're working to get to somewhere else. Potentially. I don't know if that's the verb I would use though, because I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit.
Yeah, Jeannie, what you were saying about the big goals, the big leap to the next thing. I mean, I've been self-employed for many years myself, but yeah, my goals are big, and I don't think I'm yet the person that can do those, which is part of the reason why I'm here.
Yeah. One of the things that's been coming up for me lately has been a disinterest in doing that next big thing alone. Like I started my own business, did the whole thing, did it fine, great, sure, conquer, do. And now I'm kind of sick of doing it alone. I'm ready for the next community of right people to do that thing, which is also scary and hard to find that right energy sometimes and skill set, and to let go. I'm a little bit of a control freak, which is why I, did some stuff on my own. It's like, well, I want it how I want it. You guys are going to mess it up. I'll just do it myself. Well, I recognize that the next big thing can't happen without people.
Yeah. I sometimes love to hear about that. Absolutely.
This has surfaced, as we talk, but yeah, defining work and what work is, because I think that, when we're asked that question, what is work for, we immediately all go to the 9 to 5 sitting in an office type of position, right? In the field of adaptive leadership, program facilitators will often talk about giving the work back to the participants, whatever that work may be. It might be just simply having a conversation about what diversity means, in a non-inclusive environment, or it might be, giving the difficult conversations, about equal pay for equal work, giving that conversation back to the people who are struggling with that issue. But I don't think that most of us go there, right, in relation to how do we define work. So not very articulately, but what I was writing about is what is work? What is it for in that the truest form of that question? Because when we think about work, just internalize the percentage of jobs out there which are what I call lever pulling positions or lever pulling professions. Not to say that there's anything absolutely wrong with those types of jobs, but literally think about it. Like you go to work, you work for 8 hours, and you literally pull a lever, and that's what you do all day. And so when you ask that question, what is work for? In my mind, work is a means to an end, right? Like it's something that you must do in order to, or that you need to do in order to, answer the question, what is life for, a little bit more fully. I struggle with that because I'm a public servant, right? And so I define, so much of my being is defined by what it is that I do. And so if I'm not in a meaningful position, my life becomes a shamble, a big one.
Shit show. Yeah, me too.
So, that's what I'm going back and that's what I'm doing, is just going back and forth between those two questions, where they almost seem to me to be the same question, really. Like, what is our existence for? Like, what does it all mean?
Kyle, I have a question. Is your definition in this particular conversation of work employment as in income, or is it a broader definition of work?
Yeah. So, someone who, once again, I'm just trying to think, I'm not trying to place any judgment, but, someone who perhaps loves their job, but, they have a stick with a pokey thing and they spend their days picking up trash in a park, right? Like that is something that they have to do on a day-to-day basis so that they can get to their real job, which is providing for their family. So maybe to them, their work is raising a family, raising a healthy family with opportunity. So it's not absolutely at all the traditional notion of work and what we place, how we define that term.
Got it.
I would agree with Kyle in terms of what I was thinking about is I was relating to what Simon Sinek said about work and a job. I kind of wrote there is work and then there is a job, and the two might not always be the same, because he says that your work is your art, but your job is what you do in order for you to live. And I just started thinking about, we always say, oh, I'm going to work tomorrow, but is it really we're going to work, or we're going to a job tomorrow, which may not necessarily be our work? And a question of, does passion fuel my work, or do I find my passion through work? Does work identify what my passion is? So the work and job thing for me are two separate elements.
Love that. Raises another good question about how much we can bring our work to our jobs, or how, if they are separate and our jobs are what we're doing to make money, where there is how much we can bring work to that, and the dangers of doing that or keeping them separate, where it's like, hey, don't bother me, I'm just getting my job out of the way so I can focus on my work, versus I'm actually going to focus on my work inside my job, which both of them seem powerful, but also maybe dangerous, depending on how we approach them over time, right?
Sure.
So I started out thinking that they were totally two separate things, that I viewed work and life as two completely separate things. Because I've always seen work as a means to an end, and the end being living the life that I want to live and being happy. And then I realized I've never had a job making widgets. And I can remember when I was really young thinking, and really young being probably the age some of y'all are, in my late 30s, early 40s, being wow, I always thought I would have done more. I always thought I would have changed the world. I would have, and not in huge ways, but in some way. And then I started thinking about the fact that actually the work that I've been incredibly fortunate and privileged to do really does tie so much back to my life. And then I started thinking about the fact that I never thought that I'd be sitting here in this office wondering if this work that I've been doing, this phase of everything, life and work, had kind of an expiration date. And it kind of feels like this does, like sitting in this office, it feels like what I've done has an expiration date. And then I'm wondering though, like, is that expiration date more like milk? Or is it more like yogurt? Or is it more like canned food? Where, you know, when milk goes bad, you throw it out. Yogurt, you kind of go, it's already kind of bad, like starting to get soured, so I can eat this later. And then canned food, like sometimes you're just like, oh, this just really isn't for me, but I know it's still good, so I'm going to take it and give it to someone else, like through the food pantry or on Buy Nothing or something. So just kind of thinking about like, what does this expiration date mean to me right now? And I do really feel like, obviously I have more to give this life and this universe. And so it's just been kind of thinking about, you know, at this phase of my life, life is definitely for the living and for living. And then like thinking about those who got us here. There was a quote in one of the books this week. It was how each little blade of grass has an angel that leans over it and tells it to grow. And so I was thinking about who have my angels been? How are they going to be able to help me and influence me? And then I was kind of thinking about sometimes life is for being the angel, and sometimes life is for being the blade of grass. But most of all, it's just about like being. And I'm in this really weird place where it's really exciting to have this expiration date facing me and deciding what it means. Like, is it milk or yogurt or canned food? And what am I going to do with it? So that's where I ended up. It went
Wow.
all over the place.
That's big.
I think it's really interesting. Sorry, Sean.
No,
I think it's
you
really
go.
interesting, Leslie. Well, it seems like I have always done, like, my answer always to this question is work is life, life is work. Like I've always done, everything's been melded together for as long as I've been of working age for the most part. I have never had really traditional jobs. So all of my work has always been tied in with my life, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the not. But it is, I think about the challenge for you, Leslie, of having, done, how long have you been in that position? A long time, having done this thing that was like obviously good and fulfilling work for you, but also like, the idea of jumping ship, a job. And the idea of jumping ship for you right now, after having done that and have this sort of space of traditional job kind of thing, for you to think about what's next, feels big.
It's funny, it feels big in some ways and it feels so clear in others. And I think that clarity is one of the only reasons I can really do it. And I can say, like, I've never had a job making or selling widgets. Like everything I've done, there was kind of that, even though I say work was a means to an end, when I look back on it, it's never really been that, because I've always followed my passions or made sure that I could influence things, whether overtly or covertly, around the things that matter to me. Like if my passions and convictions can't be expressed in what I'm doing, I can't do it. I mean, you know that about me, Jeannie. Even in my friendships, I really struggle when I can't be really authentic and genuine. So yeah, it is. It's big, but it's funny when sometimes when you run into that expiration date, it just helps it be so clear that it's time for something new and different. So
it's a good way to frame that. That maybe jobs need to have expiration dates, right?
Yes.
But our work doesn't. So say, sometimes a job is like that carton of milk, but our work is like honey, right? Haven't they found honey like in Egyptian tombs that is still valid? So something, I look at these every day. These are my values, and this is something I know, Leslie, that you can probably relate to this, but I keep this right next to my, it's backwards for all of you, I know, but
No,
I'm sure you can read it.
Doesn't growth, simplicity, family, humor, and passion.
Yeah, and I keep this right next to my computer, and for me, that's what the struggle that I've been. I mean, let's be honest, I've ultimately probably struggled in every position that I've had, because I feel like when I'm not able to fully live my values in my job, I struggle with that. And I know that, you have to be realistic, right? So maybe it's not more of a, maybe it's less of a 100% of my values, but a majority of my values. If I could find a position where at least a majority of my values were being lived, then I'd probably be okay.
Plus, we change, right? I mean, we change, and we can't possibly. At least when I started my first business, or was it my first business? My business I've been in a long time. It was exciting, and I was growing, and it was new, and just the field itself was exciting. And after 15 years, I'm different. I need new challenges. The field itself, which is college admissions, is part of it. I'm just like, I don't think everybody should go to college anymore. Like, and so it's like, wow, I've changed in this way, and like, can I keep, trying to push this thing that I don't necessarily like believe it? No, I can't. So the result of that is very different clients now, which is great, but also less of them. And how do I reconfigure that, right? And luckily my work has grown so much over the last 15 years that I work with young adults now as well, which I really enjoy, but it's just so different, and it became stifling at a point. And I thought the expiration date thing really made me think of that. Like it did feel like a job then, and it was less of my work. And so transitions are necessary.
Samantha?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because the question around what is life for, I literally wrote 2 sentences. I just wrote, life is for living. And the question right now, is, do I have life? If life is for living, do I have life? And I know, and then when Jeannie mentioned work is life and life is work. So does that mean work is for living? And if our work is our art, therefore our life is for living our art. So it's that distinction of like, life is for living, but it's for living our art, which is our work, which is not our job. But how hard is it to find what our art is, or to find that meaning in our work, and understanding that it is different from art. We still have work to do outside of our job, which is our art, to give our life purpose and meaning. So that's where my thoughts are going at the moment.
Really glad we're recording this, because I started to get transfixed by the way you were describing that, and it got in my way of my ability to take good notes of what you said. Just like kind of stupefied me, which is usually a really good thing for my brain. And I get so stupid, quote unquote, that I can't track what's going on because something feels like it feels really real to me. And mysterious, right? Like if it is, like, to put it together, like, one, we are growing, so our work is maturing, in addition to the jobs or the containers that we're in, partially because we need to make money to survive. So we're in this like system where we have to do, like, work is for something else. Namely, I also put providing, like work is for providing, like we need to provide for ourselves. We need to provide for the people that we care about. So we're like actually like providing is a real thing for work. Like we need to do that. Which I'm ready to make a really good transition here, but I want to make room for Candace too, in case you want to say anything.
Sure. I think this is all really amazing. And actually, I know I came in a little bit late, but the prompt that I did yesterday for writing was the day 4, what is success, and the hidden scorecard.
Beautiful.
Which I feel like ties in a little bit to this, because I was really stuck on presence versus productivity, and how do they coexist, and how do I stay present consistently, even though I need to stay productive. So I was having kind of an issue with that paradigm. Like, what does that look like? Me staying productive in my life and also present And when do they kind of beat each other up, and when does one cancel the other out? How do those exist at the same time? So I feel like it's really similar to, am I your work life versus your life's work, and when do you choose which or the other, and when do you have to choose between them, or do we not have to? So I thought that was really interesting.
So good.
And I think it's Eckhart Tolle who describes kind of our roles and our like functions. So I guess the thought of mine was to free yourself from your function, or free yourself to be in your function. I don't know. I think something is there, and there's just a sticking point somewhere where I can't find both in one in one place. So.
Because the system's fucked. No, sorry.
Well.
What Candace has said is like, free yourself from your function, and function reminds me of productivity. Productivity reminds me of machine, and in this capitalist society, we are a machine, and that's a job.
Yes.
So it's like freeing ourselves from our job means that we focus on our work, which is our art, which gives us meaning, which gives life's meaning.
Yes.
So it's like finding that space to have both, because you need the job to live, but you need the art, because art is what life is for. It's for living. So your job is not for living. Your job is to be able to live, in a way, in the society that we're in. But productivity is a word that I'm really struggling with at the moment, because I need to be productive in society. I need to be this. It's like it gives me that thing of a machine producing without space for living.
And
so
it's
that
gross.
Productivity word, it's a word that I'm really reimagining and trying to figure out what it actually means to be productive in life.
Sean, that looked like stabbing. Just
Oh, I'm
saying.
sorry. I was pulling a lever. I was pulling a lever in my job. I was
Also
commenting.
stabbing the system.
I go.
Is this distracting you, Samantha? Please proceed.
And you're right above her head in my. Yeah, you're right above her. So
I'm trying to tie Kyle's point to what Samantha was saying non-verbally, but apparently it's a little miscommunication. I'm lever pulling in the machine that I work in.
Gotcha.
Okay, sorry, that was a fail.
But I want to say this about that, Samantha. This is a constant struggle for me, trying to get out of the system of mindset of money, consuming, production, functioning, and it's super hard to do in capitalism. Yes. And we are trained in it, and it's a constant battle, and I hate it because I'm also money driven. Like, I like stuff. Yeah. I like food, and I like drink, and I love beautiful things. So really. Last time I took this class, I said, Sean, how do I get out of this money?
That's a fun call.
Thing, because I can't, it's hard. It's
hard. You're going to have to give up your love of fine wine or start working harder. One of the two is going to have to, you're going to have to do you have to do more job to drink more wine, or, I don't know, actually, Kyle.
But then.
Well, go ahead, Samantha.
So I was going to say, but why is productivity linked to money? Why can't efficiency and effectiveness be linked to money? Because being efficient and effective means that you're doing your job well and still getting the same output. But productivity for me seems as if it's just a process rather than an output. So if you can find a way to make what you do, your job, efficient and effective to get the same output, then that productivity of a machine, which is a process, falls away.
Right. I mean, the system, what I would say is, very broad statement. The system is what it is, and we ultimately need the system in order to use Sean's word, provide. But perhaps it's the way we approach the system that is the issue.
Yes.
Something that I wrote, the first 4 lines. The system always wins, as my boss told me after he listened to my situation, the one that I'm currently in. He then said to me, let's not let the system win. Well, it's going to, right? I'm ultimately being pushed out of my position because I can't do my work in my current lever pulling, widget producing job. So I've got to go. It doesn't align with my values. And going back, I mentioned the positive intelligence course that I recently finished and I took. And you could perhaps draw similarities to the group of us here. In that course, there were 8 of us, and all of us were approaching that opportunity with with challenges that we were experiencing, mostly in our jobs. Some personal challenges, but mostly professional challenges. And it was all related to the ways in which we approach the system. That's why that's one of the, exciting reasons why I'm here in this position, because I think that there's a way to approach the way we do our work at our jobs so that we can truly do more of our work and, less of the lever pulling, or at least we place a different importance on the lever pulling because it's necessary, but then we can also leave more room, in our day-to-day existence for our actual work. So I don't know exactly what that is, but, something that I'm exploring right now, and this is where my writing is taking me. I started my career in the K-12 classroom, so I love lesson planning. I love developing curriculum. I love putting pen to paper and doing that kind of like road mapping, if you will, that allows you to have some structure behind your presentation. And that's where, I'm ultimately, that's where my writing is taking me. I'm kind of like what Leslie said last week in terms of having lots of short stories running around in your head. Well, like actually putting some of those short stories down on paper. So I'm currently, developing some very rough lesson plans around civility in the workplace. And it's something that I'm thinking a lot about. If we simply were nicer to one another, and if we behaved differently in the system, we might actually all be a little bit better off. And we might actually get to focus on our work a little bit more.
Or Kyle, I'm going to propose that by doing that, if you approach the system differently and employers approach the system differently, that we create a whole new system, because this system sucks. It does not work for most people.
Yes. And sorry, can you tell that I like rabbit holes? Because what I wanted to mention about the positive intelligence course very quickly, is the 8 of us that were there, we were all struggling. Like we were all in very, very dark places. So if you think about that, the 8 of us that were brave enough to take a step forward to pursue a class like that, think about all the people that aren't yet brave enough to take that step forward. So I agree with you, Suzanne. The system sucks.
Yeah, it's not. I'm gonna do what I can to not let it win.
I want to go back to something Jeannie said. Jeannie, I thought it was interesting that you said, I like things. But then when you describe those things, they were all experiences. Like, I like food, I like wine, I like people. And I wonder, it's so funny. I was meeting with some students yesterday. We had students who get the Latin American Educational Foundation Scholarship from us meet with folks on campus to make sure that they're getting onboarded okay and things are going well. And one of them talked about her major, and she had chosen resource rec and tourism. And another one goes, I don't even know what that is. How did you choose that? And she goes, well, I was talking to my friend about the things that I love to do. And I love to travel and I love to be with people and I like to have experiences. And I was studying finance, and she said, well, maybe you should look at a different major to craft your future career toward the things you like to do. So, Jeannie, I was thinking about that too. Like, and I do know that you love experiences. You love to be with people. Like, you love food and wine, but you also love food and wine with people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, how do you create that future or a part of your future to make sure that maybe that could be part of the work, like the job part of the work?
Yeah.
Anyway, I was just thinking about that because you described experiences as opposed to things in my
right.
mind.
Yeah. And it's true. It's just all of it, again, in this current system. And I just work on this mindset, like shift out of thinking about how you have to have money so that you can do this travel thing. You have to have money. Like, is there a space to consider how those things might mesh? For sure. I just don't know what it is. If you've got some ideas, I'll take them.
Well, we have to go have some food and wine.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Christina might, she has a little experience in food and wine and organizing experiences with different collaborators and experiences too. And there's also some interesting resourcing potentially happening in this group. And I'm realizing that this admissions and curation and like how that's one thread, but also the distinction between work and job and value alignment is another one. Oh my God, my cat is turning on iTunes. You're not helpful.
This is like kind of made me think about how, you know, now they're saying we're in the fourth industrial revolution. And it's like, why was it called industrial? It's almost, it seems as if the purpose of this earth, this world we live in, is to be industrious. Why? Why isn't the purpose of being in this earth to live in our art, in our presence, in our passion? And it's like we're now going to move into a space where the fourth industrial revolution is apparently now going to be merging technology, the human being, and the social, where, you know, we have AI. So how the productivity aspect, if that's going to be taken away from by AI, then us as human beings, how can we be productive? So are we supposed to be productive if that's going to be taken over by some machine in the fourth industrial revolution, because that machine can produce things much more faster than we can? So where do we find where we belong now?
The human part.
Which connects to this collaboration part, which connects to Jeannie's thing about wanting to do this thing, but not wanting to do it alone, as a really natural, like I want to build, but I'm wanting to actually build in consort, in connection with other people, which is an interesting thing to keep live as we move forward.
Well, and you think about it.
Oh no, go ahead, Suzanne.
No, I was just thinking to your point when they keep labeling it the Industrial Revolution. Who's doing the labeling?
Exactly. Capitalist society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clubhouse room moderators, no. Yeah.
You have to be industrious. How many times have you heard that? They're so industrious. It's like, it's almost like our whole being is tied to what we can produce. If you can't produce anything, then you are nothing. If you can't produce anything for society, then for the capitalist society, then you are nothing. So if we go back to the human, we have to find the meaning of what it is to be human outside of what we can produce for the world, in the sense of a product. Instead, we have to find what we can create for the world rather than produce for the world to consume.
Yeah, I like that.
I was going to say too on that, when you said AI, that really like stuck out to me. And I was thinking, breaking it down, artificial intelligence, and what does that leave for us? And what popped in was authentic intelligence. So almost like, I think that like our human intuition is like authentic to each of us and authentic to humans. Intuition is kind of our built-in intelligence, if you will, that I don't think a lot of us know how to tap into, because we've been so industrious, hasn't left a lot of room for us to be intuitive. So maybe that's our new work, maybe working on our intuition and tapping in more internally instead of looking for stuff outside of us, looking for answers within, and just intuitive intelligence and kind of cultivating that as a human species. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, based on what you just said now, plus what you were talking about before, that kind of like presence versus productivity, the idea that just popped in my head about like that that becoming more intuitive and kind of being with yourself and all of that, right? I would love to just kind of be in that all the time, but that's not practical, and it doesn't help growth necessarily, at least in my experience. So that contentment versus striving, and what that balance is, and what the amount of each, and how you go back and forth between, and how you hold those two at the same time, that's something that I think I've been struggling with.
And I think based on what Samantha said, is kind of moving away from that industry. Like, I'm not a factory. And thinking about that, like, we're not factories. We can think of ourselves as a vessel, as a space for change and growth and advancement. And like, more so, I'm here to hold the space instead of I'm here to make things. I think if we could switch to that intention, then I don't think we would be non-productive in holding the space for those intuitive breakthroughs and those human moments that we have, and advance in that way. Maybe since we're not so busy doing, maybe we'll get busy being and change the world in that way.
It just also makes me think about, I know everyone has different opinions about the whole Texas and abortion ban, because it can be looked at as women are for producing babies. Production. It's like we want women to keep on producing for society, rather than looking at how can us as human beings make sure that we bring into this world an individual who is loved, who is supported, who is insightful, who can make an impact to this world, rather than who can be a product of this world. So it's like, it does kind of tie into that show, I've forgotten the name of it. It's like, our wombs are not for production, but it kind of seems as if with that ban, it is for production in a way.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it in those terms.
Me neither. So a couple things here. I want to go back to the function. Free yourself from your function to be able to do your function. And this question we're kind of engaging with on the what is life for side of this, hearing a lot of advancement, evolution, growth, like creation, which kind of like life is creation in a sense, like, and we're part of that. So we're creating is one way to frame it. Anyway, in this function question, Aristotle, so it's not just Eckhart Tolle, but Aristotle, in terms of trying biologically understanding something's function. We can look at human beings. Like, I can look at a pen and ask, like, what is the function? This pen is what it's for. So this whole framing of this conversation is from Aristotle's idea of what something is for. What is life for? And we could ask, what are human beings for in particular? What I want to say in that context is that I love this point. I wrote down, I'm not a factory, I'm a garden. I'm here to hold space for growth, not to make consumable things. That I am this combination of authentic intelligence. And how do we do that? How do we actually get in touch with who we actually are and become more intelligent in the ways that we can become intelligent, right? And a lot of that gets put into this context of me doing this inner work, like us doing this work of surfacing. And I want to suggest, based on Aristotle, that inner surfacing work is a social thing that we do, that we exist in society. And then a lot of that social work is play. More and more, I am really interested in this idea. And to your point, Kyle, about making a more civil workplace, I'm thinking about making a more playful workplace, one where play is encouraged and engaged, where we honor human beings for what human beings are, that enjoy this sense of a give and take with other human beings, where I have enough respect and loving kindness for you that I'm willing to entertain some civility, which I think civility might be the first place to start on this. I might like start with civility and then go to loving kindness and then go to play. But I'm like, I just want to suggest that what we do this week and why I love this chapter is it breaks life into looking forward to where we're going this next week. It breaks the work-life balance, right? We've been talking about what work is for and what life is for. We can take the life side of that tree and separate it into our health, talking about nutrition, talking about our sleep, talking about our exercise, talking about our physical health, but then also our mental health. So having good, healthy mindsets, feeling, and that health is connected to our sense of play, which is our ability to do things for their own sake. This is where play and work are different. Work is something you do for something else. Play is something you do for itself. Play is something you do voluntarily. Work is something that people impel you to do. And the question for me in previous semesters or previous terms of this class has been, how do I make my work more playful? I've got 72 student essays to grade come Wednesday. And I'm working on this essay on midlife emergence. And I'm super excited about thinking about play. I got this work that I want to do. How do I make my job of grading those essays to not make me into a machine and have it, okay, getting ahead of myself. Life is work, is in this sense, health, play, and ding, 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 ding. In the book, he says love. And where I want to say love, if I'm going to redo this for our purposes, because I think we have a somewhat unhealthy sense of this, is health, play, and relationships. And by relationships, I'm also meaning community and people. And when we start putting together a life design, when we really get serious about, okay, how am I going to design a dream job that aligns with my values? And what does that process look like? By the way, brainstorming, prototyping, conversation, experience building, there's a system to it. Now we're exploring how we can play with or experiment with our relationships with other people as a vehicle to surface our intuitive knowledge, so that we're not just in our own rooms doing this intuitive work. Suzanne, one of the things you said was really striking to me, that deep intuitive work isn't very productive, or like it doesn't necessarily get you anywhere. Something like that. Did I mishear that?
Yeah, it wasn't, it was more that as we do that intuitive work, like we can just be sitting meditating all day.
Yes, it's like
right,
we can
and not actually communing with other people or interacting with the world at all.
Not doing our work. It becomes like, oh, sorry, can't be bothered. I'm in my pages. Yeah, you might be working on making the world a better place. I'm taking a course on writing the good life. I'll be over here. Right? So instead, it's like, no, actually, how do we frame our work? And that's the only thing I want to say moving forward. This is an inspiring vehicle container for our work, I hope. Because when Samantha kicks us off by saying, I think we need to make a distinction between work and job, and we're all like, haha, yes. And then that informs what everyone else says, to the point that by the time I loop back around, I'm thinking about this in a way that I wasn't before in my own pages. That's what I think education is doing. That's why I'm sold on this as work. What I'm curious about is where you take this with your work. I'm just suggesting from an Aristotelian standpoint, we're also looking at social relationships and conversations. And we're also looking at our sense of play. So yeah,
Awesome.
I'm done.
Sean, I have a question.
Please.
So right now, what we're doing now in this 1 hour session, is this work or is this play?
It's the most playful work I could possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's both. It's me.
And it doesn't feel like a job at all. It feels like I'm now subsidizing this work with my job.
Mm.
And I think that's quite important for me, because there's sometimes where I have done courses or things in the past to help me with my work, but in essence, it was actually helping me with my job.
Right.
Rather than with my work. And that is right now, like I said to you, I'm at that crossroads of like, I know how to do my job, but I need to find out what my work is and how to do that. And I think it's unfortunate, like right now, 34 years, I'm reaching this point, but you kind of do have to do your job to a certain extent. But right now, it's like everything I do is no longer for my job. It's for my work and my art and for play.
So then a job is something mainly for income or resource of some kind.
Yes.
And work can be income or no income. It's more your life's play, I guess, right? Your life's art, that's what you said.
Or maybe our job is just another place that we get to play. Like it's another platform to play.
It
If
can
we're
be
lucky,
like,
if we're
right.
lucky and have the
Yes.
kind of job that we are able to do that. Though, when I think about this, I remember the potato maker. Oh my God. burrito maker at Qdoba who was like, she was really good at making the burritos, not because of how she was making the burritos, but because how she was interacting with every single person that she saw. And I was like, man, you seem really happy. Or I actually asked her, I was like, I basically asked her, like, what else do you do? Like, are you going to school? And she's like, no, I don't buy into, she's basically like, I don't buy into that whole, like, I'm happy. Qdoba's great. And I'm like, fucking A.
Yeah.
And she was. It was great. She's like, this is perfect. It gives me all the time I need with my daughter. They actually have good enough health benefits for me. I'm like, I'm making it by, budget's good. And I get to meet people like you. I'm like, oh my God, you're amazing at this.
I have to say this. So Samantha, if I just take this weird judgment I had on day one, I was just like, Samantha's way too deep to be an accountant, right? You're right. I just it was a weird.
I thought similar things.
I was worried where that would go.
About that. I'm like,
it's a weird judgment like that I had, and I was just like, this is so weird that I never tie someone that has the energy of you to an accountant. So I'm curious to see how this plays out. You know, I don't know.
It is. I mean, I said the same thing because accounting has very strict rules. One answer is always right. So you can't really think creatively because even when you think about what the answer is, there's still a parameter. And yeah, I mean, I love accounting because there is an answer. And I think I think outside the box in the sense of when I don't know what has caused a movement, I start thinking, what's the story? And I know people laugh at me when I say, I love what I do in audit because the numbers always tell a story. I always come back to the story that something is telling. So I
Is the
guess
story
maybe
criminal activity?
Yeah. It is.
And
that's creative accounting.
That's creative accounting.
That's it.
And
creative. I don't do that.
so what does it look like? This is so freaking cool as a metaphor. What does it look like when you accounting? We say like, I'm taking account of my life. Like I'm doing some midlife accounting at this point. I'm like seeing how the numbers add up and what the story those numbers tell. Yeah. And those numbers are the things that we've measured. And then all the stuff that are difficult to measure often doesn't get on the books. There's like these externalities. Oh, like I did really well in my accounting, but in terms of my sense of ever having a moment to play, that's kind of an externality. My accounting doesn't measure for play and it doesn't measure for quality of life, which is like, that's what we should be fucking measuring. That's the quality of our life, right?
Yeah.
Which is a lot hard to
And in accounting,
No, go ahead.
In accounting, everything has to balance. And in real life, things don't balance. Things flow, things are in harmony. But accounting isn't, everything has to balance. And in reality, you can't get everything to balance.
That's so interesting.
So does that mean the whole thing, if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life? It's completely dead.
Bullshit.
Okay.
Depending on your definition of work, that definition
That's
assumes that work is separate from life. And then we have this whole cottage industry of like, oh, let me help you with your work-life balance. Are you working too much? Do you want to reduce your work to have more life? And I call bullshit on that. No, I want, like, my understanding of work is something I can put my life into. My life, we also say my life's work is, that's different than we never say my life's job is.
Right.
So I don't disagree, but I would just push back saying, kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier, like everyone, assign a percentage. What percentage of this world's population literally has a job that they hate?
Right.
And that's never
70 to 80%.
That's never going to change, right? So then it really does, come back around to the way in which we approach our work and what it means in relation to our life. So, rather than calling it work-life balance, perhaps just switch it to soften out a little bit and call it, life-work balance. And this is, I'll look forward to, continuing to give, you all updates as I proceed and progress, in some of my research. Because Leslie, I agree with you in relation to the label of civility, although just thinking from an industrious perspective, civility is something that perhaps we can get behind when it comes to professional development or social emotional development when it comes to our workforce, because there are lots of corporations out there that are really starting to take a look at the concept of kindness, love, and civility in relation to creating a healthy workforce where even if someone is pulling a lever, even if it is a job that they hate, they still, well, I shouldn't frame it like that. It's a job that they perhaps strongly don't care about. They can still go to the workplace and be happy, right? Like they can still go to the workplace and feel like they're living a full life. And, just a few examples: Cisco, Microsoft, DaVita here in our backyard in Colorado, Starbucks, the US Department of Veterans Affairs. Like these are all corporations, or these are all industries that are looking at the way they engage their workforce. And, I think that there's a lot of room, I think that there's a lot of room for this type, what we're doing right here. There's so much room for this type of learning for all of us. I'm just trying to figure out, for myself, how to tap into that growing field of study and practice so that I hopefully can find a job that I love, and so that I can, from this day forward, never work a day in my life. Oh, if that was only so easy.
Yeah, DaVita has a chief wisdom officer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hope
Doing
that,
enneagrams and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Kyle, when you talk about that, talk about influencing, society, I would just ask all of us to think about the privileges that we have that are allowing us to even sit in this space and do this.
Yeah.
We have so many people working right now on our campus that wouldn't be allowed to take the hour off to do it. Like they've got widgets to pull and levers to pull so that the buildings are clean, the heat is on, the students can learn. And what an incredible privilege that to be able to sit here and think about the evolution and revolution of what work is going to look like. And we've got to remember that, can we lift those people up while we're climbing? We're climbing to try and get something better, but we've also got to bring people with us and lift others up. I think about that a lot because of the families that we work with. And, they just don't have the opportunities that we have, and really thinking about, and I know people don't like this word, but thinking about your privilege, thinking about, the things that you're able to do because of where you sit in space right now, I think is really important. And how can we change this, what we're talking about, for the folks that are out there, they don't have that opportunity. I can see some of them working outside on the lawn right now. So,
and why couldn't we? Why couldn't we change that part of the system? Yes, things need to get cleaned, the lawn needs to get mowed, but why couldn't we have flex time in that day? Why does it have to be mowed at this time or cleaned at this time? Is there a way to, it's more of a question of how, and nobody's asking that question. Well,
and those voices aren't in the space. Like those voices are rarely in the space where the conversation's taking place. So we've got to make sure that there are people speaking for those voices. Right now, they're not. Someday they might be. That would be awesome. But right now, they are out mowing and cleaning and serving food and doing the things. So we've got to make sure that we represent for them.
I'm starting to think that employers don't like flexible working, because if flexible working being at home, we manage to weave in play with being with our families, play with being able to go out for a walk at 3 p.m., play being able to not have to commute 1 hour to go to work. Flexible working has allowed us to fit in some sort of play between our jobs, which is why a lot of companies want us back in the office. They don't want us to play. They want us to job, if that's a term. And maybe that's spurring on the Great Resignation as well. Like, I want to work flexibly. I don't want to job flexibly, or I don't want to be in a job. I want to work according to what my flow is.
Yeah. And Samantha, that's where this, and I'm not trying to oversimplify this, but, that's where, doing kind of like that comparative analysis of different generations and what it is that different generations define as their, most important values. That's where you see a lot of that push and pull, because I think you're exactly right. Some of our older generations that have a very traditional view on what work is and what work should look like, or what a job is and what a job should look like. are very different than what our younger generations look like, which is part of the reason for the Great Resignation. Although I know that people are quitting their jobs regardless of age and regardless of generation, but there is really something to be said there. You know, our younger generation saying, no, not interested in working for an organization that doesn't value play. Sorry, you know, I'll get my work done and I'll do a better job if you allow me also to have the flexibility to, you know, work and fit my job into the schedule that I want. So I think you're exactly right.
Well, and the power of the masses to say, oh, well, we're leaving. If you want your company to continue to make money and you need my help doing it, you better learn how to shift, right? Like the power of the people saying, yeah, I'm no longer doing that.
Yep.
Two things. One, to connect Leslie's point on, and just personally, research and development for what kind of course offerings, when we were looking at this, bringing this type of learning environment to people and then talking to advisors and perspectives on that, there was two different interesting voices that came in. One about going for business professionals in corporate environments. So helping companies establish these kinds of protocol inside, working with the chief learning officer to give them the framework, tools, outline, format, kind of workshop consultants to help your company leverage its authentic human capital, right? I can see the marketing now. There's a lot of money there, right? Which is why some people were like, this is where I would go if I were you in your business development. Then to Leslie's point, a couple interesting things came out at the very beginning around bringing this to underprivileged communities that don't ever get the chance to be in a philosophy class. We're talking about, last week, we went to a poetry conference in Grand Junction where there were two professors from Dene College. Dene is the actual Navajo word for the Navajo. It's their own word for their own people. And Dene Reservation in northern Arizona, largest food desert in the country. Unemployment is somewhere between 50 and 80%. Services are, I mean, there is very little opportunity to do this kind of work and or integrate their past in a productive way. So we have a cultural past and language that we for years have been punished by using. I bring all this up as that for like, and Kyle, for our continuing conversations of the spectrum of where do you bring this type of program into corporations where people are leaving their jobs and or into situations to empower others to do this kind of thing, to empower leaders to work in their underprivileged communities, to bring that kind of learning. Again, there's no money in that, quote unquote, but there is public funding for socio-emotional learning. There is public grant funding for that kind of social aspect of like, actually, we want to help this community working in collaboration with the Navajo government to create, which is a stretch based on what I know about the Intertribal Council, what they were saying, whatever, to do this kind of thing for these people is another potential area that could be really beneficial, especially from like a philosophical standpoint of who are we as a people and how can we bring that tradition, language, culture into the world in a way that makes sense. Because a lot of them are, it's a very difficult situation on that in the Navajo Nation. It's wild. So I don't know personally and thinking about, and I interestingly at this point settled on thinking like, my work is to help people that are relatively reflective of me, people who are in transition, trying to figure things out, interested in this lifelong development space, interested in philosophy, interested in education and the future of education, and wanting to do something more. That's like the initial, that's why it is the way that it is, but I can feel it in my heart, like when I'm talking about it, how I still worry whether or not this is the population this really needs to get to. Like I believe in this, but I also could see some partnerships where we're getting grant funding to bring a train the trainer program to incorporate native histories into the new fourth industrial age, whatever we want to call that, in terms of serving people in our country that are unbelievably disadvantaged.
And just to say this very quickly, because Leslie, you know, when you were commenting on, you know, let's make sure that we recognize our privilege, absolutely, do not disagree with that at all. But here's the thing is that so few of us, even those of us who are privileged, do not pursue this type of opportunity. We do not pursue this type of social emotional learning. I've been on this bandwagon for quite a while. We look at K-12 education as a right? Like it's a fundamental right for anyone who lives in our society and in most societies, not all, but most. And we kind of stop there. Not like even higher education isn't a right. Adult education isn't a right. I do not agree with that. Like I think that a lifelong spectrum of learning should be a fundamental right for every human being, because our learning and our education and our evolution doesn't stop at the age of 18. So like, what are we doing? Like we all are underrepresented. Every single one of us is underrepresented when it comes to lifelong learning. Some of us have more opportunity than others, but it's an issue. And I think if you look at our society right now, I'm sorry, I don't mean to oversimplify where we are as a society, but we dumb right now. And you could make that argument that perhaps that's part of our human condition and our human existence. But in the year 2021, we should expect more of ourselves. We should be a more educated population at this point in our human evolution, and we're not. Sorry, that's my soapbox. Excuse me.
Agree. Definitely more human. We need to learn how to be better humans.
Yes.
And even when you're saying, K to 12 is a right here, for marginalized folks, it's not effectively a right. The impact of how we do it is not that. So for the masses of privileged folks need this education, Sean. They need this in order to then be, this group, we already probably have that heart, and in many ways we're trying to do something for different groups of people to make our own communities a place where we all want to live. But there are so many people out there that don't have the tools for that and haven't even explored that. So what you're doing is helping privileged people use their privilege to make the world better so that there are no more marginalized folks.
And this is really hard to do. It's hard to find other people to have these kinds of conversations with, to do this kind of thing. I looked for it. Like I was like, I have to create this if I want this for myself, which is sad.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe it's amazing.
Well, it's both.
Maybe it's an area to question. I'm kind of
Well, this is something
Kyle's got me off. I'm like all emotional right now. I'm kind of lost.
I'll pose this question. I'll pose this question to Samantha, and it's so nice to have your international perspective here. So appreciate your position. I was lucky enough to live in Europe for 5 years. 1997 to 2002. And for 3 of those years, I worked for a British international school. So, I have, exposure to both British culture as well as, larger European culture. And I have not been, I've not lived in Europe for a lot of years, but something that, was very striking when I moved back to the United States is that these more esoteric, more philosophical conversations almost stopped completely when I moved back to the United States. Now, I moved back to New York, so I say they almost stopped completely, but not 100%. I found that these types of open human-to-human learning opportunities and conversations happened a lot more in Europe. I don't know if that's still the case in 2021, but maybe just something, Samantha, to get your perspective on in relation to like maybe where the UK is, or the larger European continent, because it's something that I've always thought about over the years in relation to the United States versus the rest of the world. Are we just in a different bubble here, and the rest of the world is more open to having these harder conversations? What's our situation? But anyway, I'll stop there.
I would say that we are behind in the UK specifically, because I guess it's quite telling that I'm on this call with everyone who's in America, in the sense that I work in accountancy where it's very, very rigid. There's a very structure, managers, partners, and it's a system that's there's a class system wherein there's one way to do things, and that's it. So I have found my challenge has been finding the leadership or the management that really does empower you to think and really goes on your strengths in order for you to use those to maximize what you can do. Unfortunately, the system here is kind of like, let's develop your weaknesses because that is the reason why you're not progressing. It doesn't allow for a different way to think. And that has been my biggest challenge. And it's very hard to challenge the status quo in terms of, how about if you have managers, one manager can be great at finding new clients. One manager can be great at teaching and development and learning. One manager can be great at technical. One manager can be great at the project management. They expect one person to be good at everything. And I think that is where the downfall is understanding that there's different ways to lead, that it's outside the box. And honestly, Kyle, I have not been able to see that in the UK, not at all. I know, like Sean and I have been part of the Leaders Guide with Francis Fry, who wrote the book Unleashed. That has been an eye-opener because I have never worked for a manager or a boss who has empowered me in that way. It's always been, this is what you need to do to get to the next place. Very rigid steps, very rigid box. So it's not the same in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like in continental Europe.
Okay, because we're at time, and I want to kind of just wrap this up, that these units are designed to accumulate on top of each other. There is a sense that the first week on exploring different kinds of presence gives us the freedom to explore our purpose of work in life. So Candace, you mentioned the hidden scorecard of what is success. That's basically the big question on the table this week that we're going into. How do we define success? Can we really get specific on what that is? And live for the reasons why we want to live, not for the reasons that someone else has us to live, right? So we get authentic about our understanding of success, and authentic about our understanding of work, and authentic about our understanding of life, which I'm saying we do in communication more than we'd like to admit, or more than we really fully give credit to, based on the science of learning and human evolution and whatever. So we hopefully go from presence and exploring the richness of presence, quality, attention, to this sense of purpose. So we're exploring, what is it we're doing? How are we here? What might that look like? Samantha, I also put in there, in terms of like exploring leadership training and like looking at that kind of ideas of workplace, like adult continuing education, what you've seen in time inside of corporations, because it's kind of the work that Kyle was talking about doing, and exploring civility in the workplace, those kinds of things. So we're going to start taking this presence, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but that moves into wayfinding, where we start exploring our options even more, and then start setting a little bit more of a prototype design trajectory for learning. This whole process is supposed to be a meta commentary on how we learn. 1, we reestablish presence and figure out what we need to unlearn and let go. 2, from that space, we re-articulate to us what matters in work and life. 3, next week, we use that to go new places and explore new terrains. 4, we begin to make designs, connect with people, execute, reflect. So this stage, where we are for the next week, is about purpose. Why are we here? And I am excited. The fact that we're 5 minutes over and everybody, and that we're all this engaged. Jeannie's like on her way to her job. No. Is awesome. And I am feeling like there's already some really interesting cross-pollination, Suzanne, like with the work and the jobs that we've been doing, and exploring how that might look as we move forward. I'm going to put another couple questions in there, but if you feel like you want, it's around this time that there might be a conversation partner opportunity for you to either reach out to me to say, hey, do you want to shoot the shit for 15 minutes? Even I don't know why, but just to have a conversation.
Shoot the shit, Sean.
Do you have that? Do you have that phrase in the UK?
No.
Out here, put on my cowboy.
I was gonna say that's normal here.
Shoot the shit.
Oh, is it? Shoot the shit. Okay.
We can go outside
Never
and shoot
heard
the
it.
shit. Boom, boom. Out here. Okay, anyway. Sorry. Yeah. So it's a phrase for, it's interesting. It's so funny. It's like purposeless conversation. So we're
Right,
not,
okay.
we're not talking to get something done. We're not talking for
Yeah.
work. We're talking just to play, to see what's
Okay.
going on. I'm trying to make like a low stakes environment. One, you can reach out to me. But two, at this point in time of the semester, we know each other enough. We have a little container for our community. You have the email list to say Suzanne or Samantha or Leslie or Jeannie randomly. Do you want to chat about this? I'm interested in this. So that's part of what I hope will happen. If I was in CO 300 realm, I'd be like, if you CC me on your email, I'll give you extra credit for your artificially inflated grade. No, I'm sorry. It's a terrible joke. I am encouraging you to, if you, Kyle puts shoot the shit in the that's amazing.
It's got Norman Mailer roots. Who would have guessed?
Wow. That's pretty cool.
That's super cool. I'm gonna need to point being, one of my goals for this is to provide resources in the community of people that want to make the world a better place, which I really do. It's cliche, but it's like, start making ourselves the best people we can be so we can build the best things we can build that'll have the greatest impact.
Right on.
Which is, I think, that's what John Dewey says, that's the role of philosophy. Philosophy will save itself when it stops worrying about the issues of philosophy and starts worrying about the issues of the human being.
Yeah.
Which is, ironically, exactly what Aristotle was doing. So Dewey's full of shit, but it's still a really good quote. Okay. Any questions or things that you need from me to help you? I'm still going to send the email on this next week. There's some really cool work on success and finding your purpose. The other thing that we're going to geek out about is this week, you can create a compass and a dashboard for the rest of your journey. Your compass is like your sense of true north. Your dashboard is the sense of gauges for your vehicle. So like when you're driving your car and you're like, oh, gas is low, I need to pull over for gas. You're driving your life and you're like, whoa, the play gauge is low. Need to stop and get some more play. How do I do that? I fucking schedule it. 7 p.m. to 7:30, I'm not going to do shit except for whatever comes up. Or I'm going to play my guitar, or I'm going to write a blog post, or I'm just going to play. Driving down the road. Oh, how's my health gauge? Not as good as it could be. Maybe I should get more rest. Take time to cook a good meal. Driving down the road. How's my love gauge? How's my relationships gauge? How's my work gauge? So I'm going to share you some dashboards that will help us navigate with our compass to geek out on making this an exciting, inspirational learning environment. We're going to go on a journey. And on that journey, we're going to need a compass and we're going to need some dashboards. Does this look like I'm driving, I hope?
It does.
Not stabbing
Not
something?
stabbing anybody.
Or masturbating two
anyone.
different people? Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's good. Well, on that colorful note, happy making all these terrible jokes now in my head. Probably a
You've
sign
always
that-
made them, Sean.
I know. Yeah. There we go.
Oh my gosh,
Noah.
someone mentioned Dora. I find the map, find the map, find the map. Swiper, no swiping.
That's amazing. This is a reference I need in my life.
Candace.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, humor is key value. You can put that on a gauge. How many times? I'm imagining a testimonial now. At the start of this class, I only laughed 1 to 2 times a day at most. By the end, I was laughing 20 to 25 times a day. I'd say it was worth my investment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a really inspiring group. I have the sense from when I talked to Kyle before, actually was when it really first happened, about 2 weeks before the work started, and actually my conversation with Christina before, things are happening in this group. And it's confirming that premonition to see how we interacted today, which is really inspiring. Cool?
Yeah.
All right, I got to get to my other work.
Not your job.
No,
Is it work or is it a job?
kind of relationship work, housework.
Oh. Okay.
It's things that are interesting. No, and it's also my work relationship with myself. I've got a really awesome email I'm going to send everyone tomorrow. So if you're not, yes, I've got some cool stuff to share with you that I've had you all in mind for my weekly newsletter. I'm deciding to make my newsletter like directed at you all and then everyone else secondarily. So there's some cool shit in there for you.
Nice.
And it's online with this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, no, thank you all. This is really inspiring. And I couldn't do this without you, obviously, which is my whole fucking point around the future of education. It's just this online cohort model is powerful. And I don't know why more people aren't leveraging it. It's really hard to do on our own. It's almost impossible to do on our own, I think, at least for 97% of us. Cool. All right, I super value you all. Reach out. I'll be sending an email tonight or tomorrow with all of this stuff, and the one tomorrow morning will have the links that I've been cultivating to thinking of y'all. Okay.
See y'all next week.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
See you next week.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody. That
Bye,
was
everyone.
great.